I'm Mike Hall, the Executive Director of the Three Rangers Foundation, and through our missions and programs, we are supporting the Ranger Regiment's Ranger for Life initiative by providing experience, guidance, and vetted resources to current and veteran Rangers and their families. We support the 75th Ranger Regiment's Ranger for Life program by providing benchmark transition assistance to current and veteran Rangers. We maintain transition counselors at each of the Ranger battalions, offering timely and personalized support of the regiment's Big Five of transition, which are mentorship and networking, education, financial wellness, VA benefits, and holistic fitness and wellness. Central to our approach is an extensive mentorship network, leveraging a network of about 10,000 formal and informal former members of the 75th Ranger Regiment to enhance opportunities and ensure Rangers thrive in their post-military lives. These meaningful relationships allow both mentors and mentees to stay connected to the Ranger community and benefit from shared experiences and guidance. We believe that transition is a lifelong event. Today, we're going to hear some mentors advice from Ranger Network mentors, CSM's retired Jeff Mellinger and Mike Kelso. Both I've known for, gosh, 40, 50 years now. And they've had a successful military career and retired from that, had a successful civilian career and retired from that. And they're going to give us, what goes into making that retirement decision. So to start off, Mike, it's always good to see you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your military career and then what you did after you retired from the Army?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to other Rangers about this. Um, Basically, I enlisted in September of 1973 and starting my journey in the 82nd Airborne Division. And all of 32 years later, after having served in many, many super units, including the Ranger Regiment and the Ranger Training Brigade, other parachute units, including the Rhodesian Light Infantry, I retired from the Army and was very fortunate to be hired to work in the Maneuver Battle Lab at Fort Benning. And I lasted with the same contractor for 17 years, which is fairly unheard of to go to work for a defense contractor after retirement from the Army and stay with that company for that many years. So I was very fortunate in that. And working in the Maneuver Battle Lab also allowed me to continue to support soldiers through the efforts of the Battle Lab, which really made my day continuing to go on to Fort Benning and see soldiers every day as they went through their daily business, especially when it come time to testing new equipment, anything from nods to robots. In the later years there, we started with the robotics. So that was all very good. So all in all, I had a great time as a soldier and a great time as a civilian working for the Maneuver Battle Lab.
Thanks. Jeff, original member of 2nd Ranger Battalion, original member of RD, like Mike Kelso, a Ranger Hall of Famer, the last active duty draftee. Is that still right? But Jeff, why don't you tell us a little bit about your military career and then what you did after you retired from the Army?
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and thanks for the opportunity. I hope that these talks spur some thought and help some folks that are out there going through the same stuff. But yeah, so I was drafted in April 1972, and spent the next nearly 40 years on active duty in a variety of assignments. Was probably going to get out of the Army for my initial assignment because of the problems that were rampant in the military at that time. Drug problems, racial problems, leadership problems, and company commander finally convinced me to re-enlist because there was a new unit forming, a Ranger battalion, and they were going to make the Army different. He promised, and I certainly knew what Rangers were. In fact, the guy that in-processed me to my first unit was wearing a leather Merrill's Marauders combat patch. So that was pretty memorable. But the Ranger battalion the first battalion was full, so they ended up sending me the second battalion, and I was one of the original members of that. I got there in December '74, but that really was a foundational assignment. And as I look back over my career, the things I learned and the leaders that influenced me in the Second Ranger Battalion from those days have stuck with me my entire life, not just in the military, but onward. As Mike mentioned, a variety of assignments in a number of countries, and I had some great opportunities to serve with a lot of great soldiers and other service members over the years. And then retirement came, and I thought I was just going to retire. I really had no plans for post work. Uh, I had envisioned that what I did in my Army career was going to carry me through in civilian life for the rest of my life. And I got a surprise phone call from somebody that wanted to hire me for a company called Kinetic North America. You know them because of Talon robots and EOD. RPG nets for MRAPs and a variety of other things, gunshot detection systems and so forth. And I worked for them for about 15 months until sequestration took its toll on them, and they had to start laying off large bunches of employees because they weren't selling their products. DoD wasn't buying them, and so I was, in a long list of people that were let go from the company. And once again, I found myself happily retired for about 4 months until I got a phone call from somebody at Bell Helicopter that wanted me to come to work for them on the program that was developing the aircraft that's going to replace Blackhawks. 10 years later, we won that contract, and they're going to start building those aircraft. And I took the opportunity to really retire at that time because I thought I had done what I needed to do to help that company get to where it got, and it was time for somebody else to pick it up and take over. And that's the long and short of me.
These guys both have very interesting careers, and I've listened to a couple podcasts they've been on. One that comes to mind is Mike Burke's Legends of the 75th. You get a chance to pick those up, you'll really enjoy hearing about these two guys' career. It's interesting. You both had careers after the Army that most people wouldn't think typical Rangers would do. Just a knuckle dragger kind of thing. But it goes back to given the opportunity. I think Colonel Lazinski used to say, if you give the Rangers a tank and you give them 24 hours, they'll be the best tank crew in the world. You just give it to them. And I think it's an example of how Rangers can be successful anywhere. Jeff, yeah, now that you're retired, although I know you're extremely busy, what went into the decision, whether financially, mentally, what went into the decision when it was the right time to retire, or I should say, retire when you're not doing anything that's making any money? What went into that decision, and how do you keep your sanity and keep going and keep looking so young?
I'll get you some Windex. There's a problem with your camera. Yeah, so I probably could easily still be working for Bell Flight. I love the people I was working with. I loved what I was doing. It mattered every day. I felt like I was contributing. But if you recall, I talked about we had won the contract. FBL was the program, Future Vertical Lift. And first thing we had to do was convince the Army that it was a good thing for the Army. Then we had to build a prototype. Then we had to build a flying prototype, and all the while convince the Army that this was something that they wanted. And of course, by winning the contract, the Army has been convinced. But as I looked at what I was doing, after we had the competition and after we had won the contract, honestly, I just didn't feel like I was earning my keep, if you will. I wasn't having to work as hard because we had won the contract, and now the company was getting busy coordinating with the Army about what the Army wanted as far as equipment on the aircraft and capabilities and so forth. And I can't really talk a whole lot about that, but I knew it was going to be 7 or 8 years before the first aircraft were built. So I just thought that, I had done my part uh, 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 in furthering that effort and helping, talk to thousands of leaders and soldiers and so forth over that decade that I worked for them. But it really was uh, time for me to take stock of where I was in life. And we were talking earlier about the friends that aren't with us anymore. And we all know somebody that fell over at their desk because they kept working until the day they died. And I just decided that, as much as I liked what I was doing and the people I was doing it with, and they were paying me well, I needed to spend some time with family and friends and doing the things that I wanted to do without worrying about what trip I was on and where I had to travel to next. So I just kind of looked around, and I picked an arbitrary date last year, actually, after an anticipated major trade show. I said, after that show, I will have trained the guy to replace me, and time to go and enjoy life. And as things turned out, the company was going through another downsizing at that point because they had lost a different contract, and we're trying to place people and so forth. And my boss's boss called me one day and said, "Hey, look, I know you're planning on going in June, but if you would consider going in March, I'm not telling you you need to, because we'll keep you till you want to leave. But if you leave 3 months earlier, that will save me from having to let one person go that has to go." So I said, "Well, I'll be happy to save somebody's job if that, if 3 months doesn't matter that much to me, because I know when I'm leaving." So that was my plan. And as you say, there's not much white space on the calendar. I continue to be involved with volunteer projects and organizations. Biggest is probably House of Heroes, where we make minor repairs to qualified veteran and first responder homes. We do everything from fixing holes in the roof to replacing doors and toilets and sinks and putting in new kitchen floors and handicap ramps and on and on and on. But I'm also finding myself doing all of those things that I would get around to it one day on that list. Making those minor repairs that I've been staring at every time I go through the doorway, or fixing that thing that's needed fixing, or whatever it may be. I've got the opportunity to do that. So if I don't have white space, it's because I'm finding things that I enjoy doing to fill in that calendar.
Your reason for retiring, sort of same as mine is, they'd asked me to move into a different position. I love the company. I love the people I worked with. And it was just like, I just, I'm, I don't want to take on another commitment. And yes, similar situation. Yeah, great rundown. And but one thing I would like you to touch on is we talked just like y'all. You talked to a lot of guys and are getting out, and somehow finances come about, and how much they need to survive and retirement. I mean, how did you obviously you're comfortable enough. I don't it doesn't look like you're living underneath a bridge, but how did you come about financially to get where you were? Did you just wait for a rich uncle to die, or did you put $50 away in 1974, or how did it all happen?
Well, yeah, I mean, I started way back when, like I'm sure both of you did, where first sergeant told you you will buy a savings bond every month. Why? Well, because the Army was making an effort to have soldiers start saving for their future, because everybody knew retirement wasn't that good. So buying those savings bonds, I think I think I bought a $25 bond for what, 17.50 or something. I don't remember what it was. Um, and I dutifully bought them every month, even though I was mumbling and grumbling about it. And then as soon as they were eligible to be cashed in, I'm smarter than my platoon sergeant, first sergeant. I went and cashed things in. And you know, if you're guilty, don't admit to it. I'll tell you, I did. But after a bunch of years, I realized what they were trying to get me to do, and I hadn't seen it because I couldn't see my future. So I would tell anybody that listens to this, and you know, start saving. I don't care if it's $20 or $50 or $100. And you'd be hard pressed to convince me that you don't have a little bit of money to put into a savings plan and start a Roth IRA or start a TSP, start an investment plan. Because if you go out to dinner once this month, you got $50. Eat at home, fix your own meals, and you'll find a way to put that money aside. And I tried to share that thought through the years with a variety of NCOs and units. I did other things like you know, when you're deployed and you've got special duty pay and you've got imminent danger pay and so forth, put that money in the bank. You're already living without it when you deploy. If you spend it on the next new shiny thing, you won't have it in 20 years when you need it for your retirement or for your house. Sorry, we've got a phone ringing here, but um, and you just got to be consistent. And once you start putting that money away, you'll forget that you're doing it. And I just tell you, you got to. And you know, if you've got kids, put some money into a Roth IRA for them, or put it into a college fund for them. And if you don't ever touch it again, it'll continue to grow over the years. But there's a lot of ways to do it. I just tell you, you ought to start investing if you haven't already, and it's never too late. And the sooner you do it, the more you benefit from the interest rates that you can get. You know, savings accounts and checking accounts aren't very good, but they're saving. But over the years, I did that, and a technique that I used, and I started when I was a sergeant first class, is every time I got a pay raise or a cost of living adjustment, I took half of it before taxes. You know, if you get $100 pay raise, I took $50 and put it to that savings program, and I did that every single time for the next 30 years. And it adds up. Pay your bills off every month. You know, this isn't probably intended to be financial advice, but you asked, and you know, I put everything on a credit card so I can get the airline miles so I can travel for free, but I pay my bills off every month. Credit card company hasn't gotten an interest payment from me in decades. I just, if I can't afford it at the end of the month, I don't buy it. So it's pretty simple. Live within your means. And you know, kind of towards the retirement question, you know, figure out what money you're going to have when you retire. That's after SPP and after your life insurance payments and your mortgage payment, whatever it is you're paying, and learn to live within those means. Because I'll tell you, Mike is unusual. 17 years with the same company, that's unheard of. Average civilian changes jobs every 15 to 18 months. Contracts come and go. So, you know, if you live within your means, you're less impacted when you lose a job or you get transferred to, you know, a different position that you don't like, or, you know, any number of things. But, you know, you really got to think through how you're going to spend your money. Too many guys will get a nice paying job and go buy a big fancy house, and then they get downsized and they're stuck with $3,000, $4,000 a month mortgage. They're in a bind. You know, they got these fancy cars that, you know, again, I'm just offering that you ought to think about your future now, and you know, wear those same clothes for 10 years till they fall apart. It's okay. You know, when I retired from the Army, we still had our 19-inch color TV we bought when we got married. I never bought a flat screen TV till I retired. And it was several years after I retired. I said, well, we can upgrade. And I think we got a 30-incher. Life's full of choices. Choose wisely. That's all I tell you. Happy for some follow-on questions.
Yeah, it's some of my story. I just gotten back from Ranger School in '77, and my platoon sergeant called me in and said, "You're going to re-enlist, aren't you?" And I said, "Nope." And he goes, "Well, how much money you got in your savings account?" And I said, "I don't have a savings account." And so took me to PAC. He told me that $55 in jump pay I didn't really need because everybody else in the Army survived on what they paid them. So that's going to go to the allotment. And then he took me down and we opened up a savings account. And yeah, it turned out all right. Not great advice. And I think people need to hear that because we just don't think about it. And, I was lucky. I didn't have to think about it. I just did what Platoon Sergeant Rush told me to do. And, now I'm pretty happy. Mike, I know you didn't think you'd be sitting here after 8 combat jumps and all the combat pay you got from doing that, but how did you get to this point? And how did you decide to retire? I know you enjoyed what you're doing out there at McKenna. You saw Rangers, you saw soldiers, you're helping them. You're a part of the fight and helping them make them better. And you've got a lot of different hobbies. But how did you decide when to retire? And how did you set yourself up for success? Because you're smiling, so you must be successful
Yeah.
retiree.
Well, I don't know how successful I am, but like you and Jeff, I truly enjoyed, like you pointed out, working at McKenna. I was working with guys I had served with as Spec 4s in 1st Ranger Battalion. I mean, that's how long I'd known some of these guys I was working with. And so to go into work every day was you couldn't beat the atmosphere that I was working with. But I decided to retire. I talked to other retirees that had retired, and they all said, "Hey, this is awesome out here. You need to do this. You need to figure out the date, the time, when you want to retire. Come on out, do it. You will not regret it." And so as I approached my a retirement date, I wanted to put a mark on the calendar. And so what I thought I would do was I would go till I maxed out my Social Security, which in my case was 66 years and 4 months. And so that's the date I put on the calendar for retiring. And it worked out fine. You hear all the horror stories about government bureaucracies and how difficult they are to work with and that sort of thing. But in my particular case, and this was at the height of COVID, where you couldn't go actually see a Social Security representative. You had to do it all on the telephone. And I'll just tell anyone out there that thinks the government bureaucracy is a challenge, and it can be, I suppose. But in my particular case, they worked with me, no issues at all, until my first Social Security check turned up. It was really easy, and it was all done through phone calls. So don't be afraid of dipping your toe into the government bureaucracy, because it's not that bad. And once I retired, like Jeff, I suppose the financial aspect was one of the major considerations to get into. And I believe you guys were married long before I was, but the number one financially for me was getting married. I was a sergeant first class when I got married. So, and up until that time, I had no savings at all. I would spend every dime I made on my hobbies. And then I got married, and all that changed all of a sudden. There was no more. And then I had kids. So there was no money to spend on hobbies because it all had to go to pay for the family. But my wife was able to squirrel away money throughout our married years in the Army, and that paid dividends. So by the time I went into my second job, we had modest savings, but then going to work for the defense contractor really increased my pay, because after I had my retirement pay, my Social Security, not Social Security yet, but I was getting my defense contractor pay. So that really benefited us tremendously in terms of saving and investing and that sort of thing. There's not much I can say bad about the defense contractor world, except, like Jeff pointed out, you just never know when that contract's not going to be there any longer. And you have to go find another defense contractor or contract to try to get hired onto. And that certainly can be a challenge. Friends of mine that still work on Fort Benning for defense contractors, in those same 17 years that I was working for the same company, they might have worked for 4 or 5 different companies in that same time frame. And in many cases, their pay goes down with each time they're hired because, as sad as we say, it's the low bidder gets the contract. Well, if the low bidder beats the company you currently work for, well, they're not going to pay you the same as the previous defense contractor paid you. So defense contracting for me was the way to go. In fact, my wife was not really happy about that. She thought I should have went for one of those GS jobs. But I don't know if I heard Jeff laugh back there or not, but as it turned out, I suppose I could have went for a GS job, but I just wanted to do things in the battle lab, like work with soldiers and work with pieces of new kit that were coming on board. And it was a pleasurable experience for me. Mm-hmm. Finances also, like Jeff pointed out, you can't be in debt and retire. Your house needs to be paid off. Your cars need to be paid off. All of those things have to happen before you seriously consider retirement. And in my opinion, I would not want to have gone into retirement having a large mortgage and new car payments and that sort of thing. It's just not worthwhile. So guys, like Jeff pointed out, start saving immediately. I had to laugh when Jeff was talking about savings bonds, because that was my experience when I was in the 82nd, forced to buy one, and then immediately 3 months later cash it in when it matured. So it was, boy, can you imagine, Jeff, what we would have if we'd have kept all them savings bonds all these years? So anyhow, I just think that retirement is not for the weak and faint-hearted. It's for those that want to really step out and start living their life. Another reason for me to retire is I wasn't able to pick my replacement at McKenna, but I was able to recommend a Ranger buddy for the position, and through an interview process, which I was not part of, he got the job. So I was very happy to have seen that happen. Another aspect that Jeff kind of talked about was with our kids. As soon as they were born, the wife started a college fund investment for each of those. So when they graduated high school, right off the bat, there was the money there to pay for their college education. So that's another lesson learned that I would highly recommend all parents out there to consider. And really, that's it. Family and friends, they advised me on a whole lot of this stuff. And without their advice, I don't know what I would have done, but it's important to, and I think we're going to talk about purpose here in a little bit, but the other aspect I would talk about is after retirement, and it certainly applies after the Army, is the health benefits or the way you approach your health after retiring, both mental and physical health. For me, I still go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week. I did play senior league softball for several years until I blew my knee out. So that kind of put an end to that. I always told myself I would play softball as long as I could meet the standard. Well, once I blew my knee out, there was no meeting the standard no longer. So I gave that up. But you have to stay healthy. Here's another big one. I hear all the time from guys that are putting on weight. I go to the gym all the time and I'm still putting on weight. Yeah, well, what are you eating? You can't go to Burger King every lunch. I don't care how often you go to the gym, you're going to put on weight if you don't eat right. So you have to have a healthy diet. you have to do physical training, and mentally, you have to find something that keeps your mind engaged, whatever that might be. You know, I still support the Ranger community. I support the infantry community, but it keeps me young at heart being around all those guys when I am. And if you're young at heart, that'll take you a long way. And any follow-on questions, Mike?
No, thanks for hitting on the physical fitness. I think that was part of our identity for so long when we were in the military, we were in the Rangers, and you know once you let yourself go, there's no coming back. I mean, I was lucky. I'd put on probably 15 pounds more than I wanted by the time I retired from the Army. I was out for about a year, and then I got recalled. Went back to Afghanistan for about 15 months, and I dropped all that weight. And I said, I ain't never
Mm-hmm.
going back, because no matter how much I went to the gym, or it wasn't coming off. And it's a big part of
Right.
when you're around other Rangers, or maybe you're wearing a hat or a t-shirt, and people are saying, "Were you in the Army?" And they sort of look at you like, "Sure you were." Yeah.
No,
So
that's
it's
what happened to
a big
me.
part of mental health. I believe. I mean,
Yeah,
you don't have to be
absolutely.
an ultra marathoner, but
No,
yeah.
I mean, that's what happened to me. I went to work at McKinnon over 3 or 4 years. Boy, I was getting large. And I walked in where my guys were working and looked at them and looked at me, and I said, "Oh, this ain't happening. This is," So I immediately went on a diet of eating good food,
Yeah.
and took off almost like 30 pounds. Uh, because I looked at those two guys and I thought, my Lord, I just do not want to look like this.
Yeah.
And because, like you, I didn't want to go around reunions and stuff and be the one guy standing out. so yeah, I agree, man.
And savings bond's a funny story. It was about 2 years ago. I was going through a safety deposit box, or our box, and I found a $25 savings bond that was issued in 1976. And I
Oh.
took it to the bank and cashed it. And she had to look it up online to figure out what it was. But it was worth like, I think it was worth like $217.34 or something like
Wow.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike, I'll continue with you, and
Okay.
some great advice. But yeah, one thing I like to finish these up with, and not the retirement, although it goes into it, but a lot of guys we talk to, and I know you guys talk to a lot of transition guys, and the purpose question usually comes up, and what does that really mean? And some people are looking for a job, that's going to be their purpose or whatever. But I think it's a lot of things. So, I mean, Mike, as when you retired from the Army, I mean, how did you quote unquote find your purpose, or what are the factors that went into it? I mean, is it something you worked for, or is it? I call it, it was like when I was in the Army. As long as I'm having more good days than bad days, life's going okay. I mean, how did you adapt? And again, I know you're very successful, and again, you're well adjusted.
Yeah, I tell you, Mike, I knew that when I retired from the Army, well, one big thing, I continued to work on Fort Benning. So that was, yeah, I was retired, but I still going on post every day. But I wanted to do more than just say I was a retiree working in the battle lab. I, I saw my purpose as still contributing to the Ranger and infantry communities. And the one way I have now done for all these years later is I serve on the board of the Ranger Scholarship Fund and the National Ranger Memorial Foundation, where I'm the scholarship director. And I find that giving back to young Rangers and their families, boy, that keeps me motivated. It truly does. The Ranger Scholarship Fund over the last, since about 2006 or so, however long that'll be, we've given $1.5 million in scholarships uh, to Ranger families. The Ranger Scholarship Fund, we don't give it to Rangers, but we give it to their uh, kids and wives, is who's eligible for that. Whereas the National Ranger Memorial Foundation Scholarship, that's open to any Ranger, active, retired, or their family members. So being able to give back to the Rangers to show them that there are those of us out there that are not just paying lip service to their service. We're actually trying to enhance their quality of life by helping their families with their higher education. And that really goes a long way to keeping me uh, grounded, if you will. And the other thing is, I'm on the National Infantry Association board, and I support the National Infantry Museum. I have a World War II Jeep, which I take to some of these activities that they do. Which, in fact, there's one going on this afternoon, which I had to beg off on, but that's okay. So it's a lot of fun. It's just a lot of fun being around not only other retirees, but young soldiers.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to the 250th anniversary stuff that's coming up here about mid-April or so. It's going to be a blast. So that's my purpose, is continuing to support uh, active duty soldiers. That's what I enjoy doing.
Yeah, me too. Jeff, you're involved. I know. I don't know how you find the time. I know. I see bits and pieces of all the different things you've been involved with it when you're on active duty and when you were still working and still now. But again, a very well adjusted. You're talking about Social Security. I mean, I made the decision on when I was going to draw Social Security by talking to my financial advisor, Jeff Mellinger. Uh, it was a good decision because it completely changed my mind on how I looked at it. But Jeff, how did you find your purpose, or well, how do you have more good days and bad days, even when you were going through some of that? I think you had some medical issues, I believe, with your knee not too long ago, and had to get that redone. And
Well, the medical issues follow us. It's the foolishness of our youth catching up to us is all it is usually. But sometimes it's things completely out of our control, but sometimes it's lacing those boots up and doing the other 10 miles when you really. I mean, we all know what we do, and we wouldn't do it any other way. But as I was listening to Mike talk about the things that he has been involved in, when somebody just asks you that question, hey, what do? You think of a thing or another thing, but I really think it's important that finding purpose really is finding something that is meaningful, that matters, that you feel like it's making a difference. At least that's what I envision it as. So, I mentioned earlier House of Heroes. We make, last year we did, close to 100 veterans homes that we made some sort of repair to. We're already a couple dozen into it this year, and we've got more. During COVID, myself and another guy built about a dozen handicap ramps. Just
Mm.
you know, for me, going and helping a veteran that lacks the funds, lacks the skill, the ability, needs the help. That really makes a difference to me because it gives you a sense of accomplishment and pride, and you see the smile on their face. But it's also attending the Ranger breakfast. If there isn't one in your town, start.
Good point.
That's an opportunity to find purpose, to check in on guys you haven't seen in a while, to make sure everybody's doing okay, to compare notes. There's a plethora of things that come out of it. One of those Ranger veteran breakfasts, and they're everywhere from Fairbanks, Alaska, to Key West, Florida. If you want to know more, happy to talk. It is participating in. I live 20 miles from Fort Benning. I get invited periodically to go observe training and give feedback, to do NCOPDs and OPDs, to spend time, talking to soldiers in a variety of places. It's, the Three Rangers Foundation being a mentor and offering advice and causing about to be separated or retired Rangers to think maybe of some things they hadn't thought of before, and to help them see a little bit clearer path ahead. Just spent 30 minutes a couple days ago talking to one that's been out for a little while and had a job but wants to transition to something new. So that kind of gives you a sense of purpose, is continuing to help people find their way and move along move along that path. So, what you just got to do something, and giving back is a way of doing that. Helping people on their way is a way of doing that. Go down to your local recruiting station once a month and offer to talk to, potential enlistees. I mean, there's a million ways you can go find something to do that matters, that makes you feel good about it. And frankly, gives you something to do on Thursday afternoon or Wednesday morning or whatever.
Yeah.
We kind of touched on a couple of other things that I want to do a foot stomp on, and that's fitness and kind of battle rhythm. And once you retire, nobody's asking if you're going to be at PT today. Nobody's saying, hey, you want to go do a run or a foot march or let's whatever. You've got to find time and space on your own calendar to do that. And it has to be just like it was when you were in uniform. It's got to be part of your daily living. You've got to do something, and you're the one that stands in front of the mirror. You've got to be able to recognize you aren't where you want to be, and do something about it. And the easiest way is to shut the refrigerator and put more calories out than you're taking in. I mean, and we've all seen guys that let themselves go and horribly let themselves go. And it's not 5 or 10 pounds; it's 50 and 60 pounds, and
Right.
you feel bad for them, and just let them know that you care and ask them if they're doing okay. But that battle, when you're retired, what are you going to do to fill your time? Have something regular. Do something every Thursday afternoon at 2 o'clock, whatever it is. Do something every Monday at 10. Find that thing that you're doing to keep you occupied, and don't wave off on it. PT, 3-4 times a week, you need to be out doing something, even if it's walking, biking, swimming, find your way to the gym. That's awesome. And the other thing is maintaining your contacts. I talked about Ranger breakfast, veteran breakfast, and I think that really kind of started with a lady named Sherry Klein, who attended a breakfast conducted by World War II Rangers. And, it was so successful and so, such a good thing that, it started proliferating around the country, and now there's dozens of them. But, the important part of that is maintaining those contacts, stay in touch with people you serve. Stay in touch with your new friends, because the worst thing can happen to you, you get out there and you get isolated and you think you're the only one that's going through whatever it is you're going through, or nobody understands what it's like being in my situation. It's easy to dig yourself into a hole if you don't have somebody look you in the eye and tell you you're doing okay, or yeah, let me help you with that, or whatever it is. But stay in touch with people. Don't go, okay, so you're the only Ranger in the middle of nowhere, North Dakota. That's great. You got a phone, you got a computer, use them.
There is a Ranger breakfast in Fargo, North Dakota, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. So yeah, and we were kind of laughing about the savings bonds. We all dutifully went down and cashed ours because we were smarter than our platoon sergeant. My little brother that did 30 years in the Marines went to buy a house in Hawaii, and he pulled his box of savings bonds out and bought the house.
Amazing.
With savings bonds. He said he'd never do it again because in those days you couldn't use a rubber stamp. You had to sign. You had to fill out each individually. Right. And he spent almost 3 days signing those savings bonds.
Wow.
So, anyhow, yeah, start saving, and there you go. So, all right.
So really, go ahead, Mike. Yeah.
Yeah, just one quick add-on, Mike, is staying in touch with Rangers and soldiers and that sort of thing's great. But when I started playing senior league softball, I met so many civilians that I would never have met otherwise that are friends, and would know more about a pair of jungle boots than anyone. but they're all great guys. They all have same issues that we have, especially at our age, but they're just super guys that turn out to be really good friends. So you don't have to depend upon just soldiers and rangers and paratroopers and so forth. There's plenty of civilian activities out there that involved in. For instance, I'm the second vice president of our local Sons of American Revolution chapter. So, you know, you can become involved with all these civilian activities, if you will, and really, it's a lot of fun and keeps you involved.
Yeah,
Great
you know,
point,
I think,
Mike.
yeah, I tell guys I tell guys when I talk to them, I said, stay in touch with your Ranger buddies, and you're going to realize that Ranger buddies are more important after you get out than they actually
Yeah.
were when you're in. And I also tell them, I said, yeah, you're going to maintain contact with some of them, but you're going to have a new set of Ranger buddies out there. You need to figure out who that is, and they're not all Rangers. And
Right.
very few of them did you actually serve with. I mean, my two best friends happen to be a couple of, Vietnam era guys, that I bumped into. One of them was a Ranger, and we crossed paths briefly in 175. But those
Mhm.
of all the guys I served with, I mean, these are probably my two closest buds right now. It's it's a matter
Yeah.
of where we live and that kind of same thing. We live in church together and other kind of things. So
Mhm.
yeah, but
Yeah.
anybody got any closing comments before we cut this off? It's been I think it's been very valuable, and I think a lot of people are gonna reach this and take some notes and say, yeah, I better do that. Yeah, I better do that. Yeah, I better do that.
I would just
Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, just like I mentioned earlier, just once you pick that date and you decide to retire, just do it. The water's great out here. I highly recommend retirement.
Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah, I was going to tap on that same thing. It's like when you're getting ready to retire from the Army, at a time and a place of your choosing is a whole lot better than getting it forced on you. And if just put it out there on the calendar and then start backwards planning. If you are retiring and you're in the field the week before you retire, you're a fool. Okay. I'm just telling you, there's something else you should be doing to prepare yourself and your family for retirement besides being in the field to show somebody you can do it.
Yeah.
And same too with retire, whatever you do after the military, when you're getting ready to get done with that and really retire, put that stuff on the calendar, plan for it, and make sure that your plan it encompasses all the things you need to be considering, and then follow your plan. And if you thought it through, then it'll all work out, and it'll be a lot better in the end run. But yeah, get after it, and don't, as Mike says, get out and stop doing whatever you're doing with a bunch of debt over your head. Be clear of all that stuff, and have a happy face. It is pretty good. Doing
Yep.
things you like to do, and things that matter still.
Yeah, retirement doesn't mean you're less busy. It's just you're busy doing different stuff. And same with you.
Exactly.
I've got a battle rhythm, and I'm very glad I have it. But
Yeah.
yeah, but a lot of valuable advice. It's always good to see two great friends and guys that I've looked to personally for advice for many many years. And thanks for what you all do. Continue to give and back, and Rangers lead the way.
Thanks,
All
Mike.
the way.
Ranger, lead the way.